Welcome to another episode of our video series of the mechanics of human cognition. It's great to be back. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm really energized for this one.
Me too. Today we're diving into something pretty fundamental, something that I think everyone grapples with: commitment, relationships, marriage.
Absolutely. We're going to be looking at the core mechanics of human pairing. And specifically, we're trying to untangle two very different ideas that often get confused.
Right, we're talking about that passionate, all-consuming attachment versus a more calculated partnership.
Exactly. What some of the source materials call Aşk Evliliği versus Mantık Evliliği.
A true love marriage versus a logic marriage.
Yes, but we're going to strip away the sort of, the romantic mythology. Our mission here is to figure out which type of bond is actually sustainable and, more importantly, why.
Okay, so let's start right there with the biggest point of confusion. We often think that intense, passionate desire, that feeling of I have to have this person, is true love.
That's the trap. It's a powerful feeling, a strong sexual attraction, a desire for possession. But it can be, well, quite selfish. It's more like wanting a beautiful thing in your life.
Like owning a prized cat or something.
In a way, yes. The crucial distinction we need to make is that that feeling is what we call passion, or tuku, true love, or aşka, the kind necessary for a lasting union, is something else entirely.
Okay, so define that for us. What is it?
It's a timeless, almost illogical, all-consuming feeling of selfless attachment. It's a deep, abiding commitment to the other person's well-being, even if it comes at a cost to yourself.
And the problem with building a marriage on just that initial fire, that passion,
is that the fire burns out. It's designed to. It has a biological timer.
and this is where the source material gets so specific, it's almost startling. It puts an actual number on it.
It does. The data is remarkably consistent. That peak, intense, can't eat, can't sleep phase of passionate attraction, it lasts for about 22 to 24 months.
Why? Why that specific window? 2 years seems so arbitrary.
It's not arbitrary at all. It's pure evolutionary biology.
Go on.
That period is just long enough to ensure a human infant gets through its most vulnerable stage. It guarantees family support until the child can stand, walk, and communicate its basic needs.
So it's a mechanism.
It's a biological mechanism to keep the primate male, the father, close by and invested. Once that window passes, the brain just can't sustain that level of neurochemical intensity. It's too expensive.
That's incredibly cynical looking at it that way. The brain just pulls the plug.
It recalibrates. It has to.
Yeah.
The relationship is supposed to shift into a different gear, one based on companionship and deeper attachment, mediated by different hormones like oxytocin.
So if you haven't built that deeper connection in those first 2 years.
The relationship often fails when the drug wears off.
Okay, so that raises a really interesting question about long-term marriages. If that initial intensity is supposed to fade, what does it mean if, say, 40 years in, one partner is still making these grand, fresh love gestures all the time?
It should be a warning sign, frankly, and the source material is quite direct about this. If you see these constant, almost manic displays of fresh passion in a decades-old marriage, it could suggest one of two things.
Which are?
One, they have completely unrealistic expectations of what a sustainable partnership looks like. Or two, and this is the tougher one, it might be a sign that they're projecting the neurochemical reality of an actual new affair onto the old relationship.
Wow.
Yeah, true. Enduring connection is quieter. It's about shared discovery, not constant fireworks.
This all seems to circle back to authenticity, doesn't it? Being real from the start. The sources had a very pointed warning about this.
A huge warning. It says you must avoid a situation where the person who goes to bed is different from the person who wakes up.
The specific example was about cosmetics, right?
Yeah.
Someone spending all day creating a certain look only for it to be gone in the morning.
Exactly. It calls it the revealing of a qualified fraud. It's not about the makeup itself, but what it signals a belief that your true self isn't good enough. You're starting the relationship on a false premise.
And the analogy used was an apple candy.
A perfect analogy. You're attracted to the bright, shiny, sweet coating, but if you lick it all away or scratch the surface, what's left?
Just the stick.
Just the stick, the empty core. The point is, the object of true love cannot just be the physical body, because the body inevitably changes and decays.
Okay, so if passion burns out, let's look at the other side of the coin, the logic marriage, the calculated match. This is based on things like property, family deals, security.
And this is where we have to be really critical of the word logic itself. The Turkish root, mantık, comes from nutuk, which means speech.
So logic is tied to what we can say.
It's the set of rules we use for things we can articulate with language. It's a tool for solving technical problems. How do we budget our finances? How do we fix this engine?
But life isn't a technical problem.
Not at all. Life, love, meaning.
Hmm.
These things are not contained by logic. Real decisions, the big ones, are governed by what we can call superior motives. You can't logically explain why you love one specific flavor of ice cream or why a certain painting moves you to tears.
So logic is a bad tool for this job.
It's an insufficient tool. It's useful for the how, but not the why. A marriage built only on a logical calculation, status, money, convenience will always feel sterile. It lacks purpose.
So if passion is a trap and calculation is a dead end, what's left? What actually fuels a good, lasting partnership?
Emotional literacy. In Turkish, duygu okur yazarlığı.
The ability to read emotions.
To read, understand, process, and use the data from your own emotions and your partners. People who can do this build relationships that are organic, that can evolve. They can adapt because they're tuned into what's really happening internally.
And what about happiness? Is a happy logic marriage even possible?
It's very unlikely because happiness isn't a logical outcome you can calculate. It's a way of being, an internal state.
You can't arrange the external pieces and expect happiness to just appear.
No. We see it all the time. Think of the most famous, beautiful, wealthy couples. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, for example. They had everything, logically speaking, and they still got bored of each other. Calculation might give you security, but security is the floor, not the ceiling.
So this brings us back full circle to true love, to ashk. What does this look like in practice?
It looks like selflessness. It's the desire for the other person to be well, even if it means you have to fade into the background for a moment. The core feeling is, I may not be okay, but as long as they are okay, I can find peace in that.
And when two people have that for each other, what does their relationship focus on?
The focus shifts. It's not about me or you anymore. It's about the relationship itself. It's like a new body, a third entity has been created by their union, and their main priority becomes the health and survival of that new body.
How would we see that from the outside?
You'd see them instinctively prioritizing time together, exploring, laughing, even crying together. They are feeding that third entity with shared experience. You can see it in the light in their eyes when they talk about their connection.
Okay, that's a very high standard, so let me challenge that. Can an unhappy true love marriage exist?
No, emphatically no.
Why not?
Because true love, Ash, isn't a passive feeling you fall into. It's an active, energetic state that emerges from overcoming difficulty together. Love is the energy you use to get through the hard times. If hardship makes you cold and unhappy and pushes you apart, then what you had wasn't Ash. It was just passion that couldn't mature.
That makes sense. Let's pivot to something more visceral. Sexuality. That's often called, what, 3 of the 4 legs of the marital table?
It's absolutely fundamental. We have to remember, the reproductive drive, the yürüngudusu, is the brain's baseline instinct. For any living thing, success is defined by reproduction. It influences nearly every decision we make, even subconsciously.
Even in friendships?
Yes. We instinctively gravitate away from people who we feel, on some deep level, might decrease our reproductive chances or our social standing.
So in a marriage, you can't just ignore that drive.
To ignore it is to destabilize the entire structure. But we need to be clear. We're not talking about that initial, aggressive, passionate sex. We're talking about a healthy, continuous, and what you might call a tamed sexual life. Sustained intimacy.
And if that goes?
The relationship separates in the bedroom first. That's what the source material says, and it's true. The bodies cool off, and then inevitably the minds and hearts follow.
Looking around at our culture, especially at media, TV dramas and so on, they seem to be full of these warped, broken love stories.
The media is a mirror. It's reflecting what's already happening in society, not causing it.
And what is it reflecting?
A deep corruption of values. Society's been sold 2 very dangerous, simplistic equations. Opportunity equals money, and goodness equals beauty. That's it.
So
We've become pleasure hunters and wealth hunters. Haz afçısı and servet afçısı. We look for partners who are assets, who can deliver one of those 2 things.
And the TV shows just reinforce that.
They do. Think about it. You see these powerful business characters. What do they do all day? They sit at a desk, they're on the phone, gossiping or reacting to some family crisis. They never actually create anything of value.
It promotes this idea of food without effort.
Exactly. Emeksiz yemek kültürü, the culture of effortless consumption. It teaches us that you can get wealth without work, and by extension, that you can get a meaningful relationship without effort.
But quality always requires effort.
Always. Popular culture reflects the average, and the average, without energy constantly put in to maintain high standards, tends towards decay. That's true for a business, an artist, or a marriage.
Okay, you've given us a lot to think about. To try and synthesize all this for someone listening, let's go back to the central question. Love or money? What's the final verdict?
Life without that selfless attachment, without true love, isn't really life. A loveless person is merely alive. That's the term. Sadesh Kaniladur. You can accumulate all the wealth in the world, but you'll be living in an existential vacuum.
What if you did, though? What if you woke up with $1 billion in your account tomorrow?
Okay, let's play that out. You have $1 billion. If you can't think of something meaningful to do with it in the next 10 minutes, that money is worthless. It's just a number. Value comes from purpose. A true partnership already gives you that purpose.
The money becomes a tool to serve the relationship, not the goal itself.
Precisely. Which brings us to a final thought, something for you to really reflect on.
Okay.
In many traditions, physical attraction is seen as a metaphorical love. It's not the real thing, but a signpost. It's pointing toward a greater, more enduring reality.
So the question you should be asking yourself is,
What is your relationship pointing toward? Are you spending all your energy polishing the metaphor, that shiny apple candy?
or are you investing in the ultimate destination, the selfless attachment, the shared journey?
That's the work. That's the effort that builds something that can outlast a biological timer and is worth more than any calculated gain.
An enduring relationship isn't an accident. It's a choice made every single day. Thank you so much for walking us through this today.
My pleasure. It's a crucial conversation to have.